As it says up on the projector, my name's John Knight. I'm the Business Development Director for Smarter Interactive. The title is quite a long one, so I won't bother reading it all out. My next slide is, what does my long title mean? We work with organisations to help them use technology more effectively to be able to deliver their training. And we break that down into different applications. Most training is delivered face-to-face, and certainly most people would agree that the experience of receiving training is best received face-to-face. However, most of you and many organisations that we're working with try to extend the experience in some way, shape or form. So the various e-learning platforms where you can record your content and upload it and allow people to go back and view it at a later date is a popular example. But we often find that people are struggling to find the right combination between the right software platform, the right audio solution, and, if required, the right video solution. And there's a key word that I'm going to try to refer back to throughout this presentation, which is the word experience. And what I mean by that is you need to define within your organization what type of experience you believe the people who might be watching remotely should be receiving and how you can enhance that experience. So one question that's very popular at the moment is how can people receive training through their own personal device, whether that's a PC or a tablet. And the three areas that I'm going to cover briefly in this presentation are the data, audio, and video. And with regards to the data, one of the questions is how flexible do you want the data to be? And what I mean by that is how much change do you want to be able to use or implement with the data as you go through the data that you're sharing with the person who's not in the same room with you. So an example of that is many people will deliver training by using flip charts, whiteboards, the innovation of putting post-it notes onto a flip chart or a whiteboard. Again, I'm not trying to be facetious here. These are things that we see in training rooms all of the time, and they deliver a personalized experience to the delegates who are receiving that training. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that experience, but the problem comes when you want to try and deliver the same experience to people who aren't in the same room with you, because they can't see your flip chart and they can't write on a post-it note. So the question comes, well, how do we then achieve the similar experience for people who aren't in the same room with you? So the first thing that we encourage people to consider is whether or not there's a form of interactivity, touch screen. One of our most popular brands that we sell is the Smart Board, which some of you may have seen before. We have them on our stand, so you can come and have a look. But the whole point of it is not to say, I want a touch screen that's going to make me look good when I deliver my training. The whole point is to say, by using an interactive device, you've got the capability to deliver all of your content digitally. So you can combine your PowerPoint or PC-based resources with your handwritten notes, which is on the right-hand side of the slide. And in the bottom left-hand corner here is a picture of what we call a Visualiser, but basically it's just a USB camera that's connected to the computer. So you could use something as simple as a webcam if you wanted to. But again, because that is then going through the computer, it's digital and can therefore be recorded and uploaded to an e-learning platform, or can be sent out and broadcasted to other people in real time. So once everything is digital, it can be shared. And again, if we go back a couple of slides and think about the experience of receiving face-to-face training, where you're using a flip chart, a whiteboard, post-it notes, the only way of delivering that experience to somebody who's not in the room with you is to deliver it digitally. So at the bottom here, I've put some examples of methods of delivering your content to somebody who's not in the room with you in real time. The two on the left-hand side, Cisco WebEx and Adobe Connect, we find are quite popular platforms within the training sector. On the right-hand side, I've put some examples of video conferencing platforms, which certainly at the moment are less popular for training, but generally because they've been seen as very expensive. And one of the big changes in the video conferencing market now is that most of these providers are offering cloud-hosted video conferencing. So rather than having to buy all of the expensive video conferencing equipment and run it within your organization, there are now options to basically subscribe to a cloud service. And again, if you're interested in that, come and talk to us on our stand afterwards. The other thing to say is that you don't have to have a massive interactive screen if you don't want one. So for example, on the right-hand side of that slide, there's what would be called a personal device. It's basically a mini smartboard. It's called a smart Podium. And the advantage of it is that you can just use it in an office, at home, you could take it out to clients, and anything that you do on that screen can still be outputted through a standard projector or through a TV, flat screen, or whatever you're using to deliver your training. So you don't necessarily have to focus on the fact that you have to have a massive interactive whiteboard and actually I want something that's going to fit in my car and I can take around with me. So there are options to deliver this technology in smaller forms as well. So based on the principle that we've got all of our data being delivered interactively, the question then comes over what type of platform you're going to use. And I just wanted to briefly discuss an option that comes from the interactive whiteboard manufacturer, Smart Technologies, which is called Smart Bridget. Bridget delivers two-way collaboration. And what we mean by that is that without anybody requesting control or needing to be given control, it gives it the remote delegate the capability to write notes back. And a popular way of doing that remotely is through an iPad, because an iPad is a touchscreen, and therefore they can actually highlight things or draw things on the iPad screen, and all that information comes back to the trainer, and it's all actually saved in the same file. They can also type notes back, so if they don't want to actually draw or annotate, then they can type notes back, and they can also take control over the mouse. So this is a way of, again, extending the experience. If we go back to that word experience, what type of experience does the person who's not in the room with you ideally want to receive? If the experience was going to be, I'd like you to come into my room with me, I'd like you to write your answers onto a post-it note, I'd like to have your feedback, then the question is, when you're working remotely, how can that experience be replicated? Okay, and that's the key question to consider with all of this technology. Again, just to quickly mention on our stand, which stands 64, just over there, we are demonstrating Bridget. So again, you can come and have a look at how that software actually works. So we've dealt with the data. The data, we're encouraging people to consider a way of delivering the data more interactively, the ability to write handwritten notes, to annotate over your content, to encourage people who are working remotely to provide their own annotations back, type their own notes back. So we're trying to replicate an experience there similar to face-to-face. The next question then comes over the audio. And again, if we think about, well, what type of experience might you ideally want? If you're a single individual delivering your training through what might be called a webinar, and you're using a laptop and you're working from home, then usually you're only going to need one microphone. But the more popular way of doing it might be to consider whether or not you can achieve the same type of experience when you're actually delivering a classroom-based course, because otherwise you're duplicating what you're doing. At one occasion you're running a webinar, the next week you're going into a classroom and delivering the same content in a face-to-face environment. So if you do want to be able to extend the classroom experience, then one of the questions is what type of microphones you should be using. Again, some of the things that we've seen people do before is that they've connected multiple microphones to a mixing desk, very similar to the one that's being used at the back here, and then they've connected that to the PC via a USB or an audio jack cable. But what unfortunately happens is that you tend to get quite a lot of echo that occurs because the software that you're using to share is sending the audio to the other people at the other end. And if they make any noise or talk back, their audio comes back and gets picked up by your microphones, and it gets sent back through the system, and it's what we call an audio loop. So the result of not having good quality audio with microphones that have been set up correctly can be that you get feedback, echo, and effectively, again, that word experience, a poor experience. So this is a quick diagram of an example of a room. The 3 blue circles there represent ceiling microphones, which I'll show you a photo of a little bit later. And these are there to allow the students in this particular room to be able to talk and be heard by the people who are working remotely. You might think, well, why would you want to bother doing that? Why? It's the trainer that we want to be heard, not just the students. Again, it comes back to that word experience. If you're working remotely, you feel disconnected. If you can participate in a classroom discussion and you can hear what other people in the classroom are asking and saying, it helps you to feel more connected to that environment. So the 3 circles represent ceiling microphones, and the microphone at the front, the other white circle, is usually a wireless microphone. So I'm obviously using a wireless handheld microphone. It could be a wireless lapel microphone. But in this particular example, there are 4 microphones in that room. And we use one of those magic IT black boxes called a DSP, Digital Signal Processor. And what that does is, it's very clever. I'm not going to bore you with technical information. Effectively, what it does is it knows where all the microphones are in the room because we can tell it through the software. It even knows where things like air conditioning are, and we can basically eliminate noises that it shouldn't be picking up and sending. So it's quite a clever piece of equipment. The advantage of it is that you can control that audio in that environment very, very precisely. We've even had examples where people have talked about the fact that every 15 minutes a plane flies over. We can actually test that noise and eradicate it from the system so that you don't even hear the plane flying over every 15 minutes. So it's a very, very clever piece of equipment. But what it does is it allows you to get rid of all of these echoes, this noise, audio loops, and create a much crisper audio experience. The final element to allow you to share what you're doing in real time is video. And I've put video if required here, because there's a question over whether or not people believe that video is a good thing to use, whether it's required. Platforms like WebEx, for example, generally operate on a data share only. So you might have audio and data being shared. And although there are now increasing numbers of platforms that offer video, people often run into challenges with it because they find difficulty in picking the camera, or the quality of the video is not good enough. One of my questions that I ask people is, how much of what you do is important to be delivered face-to-face in an ideal world? How much of communication takes place that's non-verbal? I know that I'm the type of person that tends to wave my hands around, as I'm doing at the moment, when I'm trying to emphasize or explain a point. And yes, I am emphasizing or explaining a point by doing that at the moment, but I also do it without thinking about it as well. Facial gestures, expressions, all that type of thing as well are all good examples of non-verbal communication. So again, we go back to that word experience. If in an ideal world, the experience that you would like would include video, then it is possible to deliver that now, and there are a range of different options. One very quick mention here for USB cameras. If you have tried to do any kind of video, you've probably started by using a webcam and you've put it on top of your monitor. Or we sometimes see people who have a screen at the front of the room and they've attached a webcam to the top of the screen. The problem with that is that webcams are designed as a personal device. So when I'm using a webcam and I'm running a video call and I've put it on top of my laptop and it's just me and I'm what I would call a talking head, in other words, you're looking at my face and my shoulders, then the webcam works brilliantly. But when you have a classroom where you have 2 or more people, desks, furniture, more space, those webcams don't tend to deliver a good enough quality of experience. So we found a very good USB camera now, which has all of these features here, a very good zoom, full high definition video, and the ability to pan, tilt, zoom the camera. And you can actually have presets on it. So for example, if I had the camera set up and I moved over here, I could actually ask the camera, just by pressing a button, to move and focus directly on me. So you can have presets set up in the room that allow you to create a better video experience. You can even get cameras that will track you around the room as well if you want them. So the whole point of all of this is to say you've got the ability to have interactive, personalized, handwritten notes over your data. You've got the ability to have multiple microphones for your audio. And you've got the ability to have high definition video if you want. And your PC becomes the heart of the system. So although there's lots of extra hardware that's going on there, the whole point is that everything is still coming back to the PC. So bringing it all together, here's an example of what a room might look like. And I've put 2 screens at the front of the room. The reason I've done that is that you might have the data, the PowerPoint, the handwritten notes, the interactive screen on the left-hand side there, and that's sharing your data out through any of these platforms that you've picked. And I've put the 3 examples up there of the popular ones that we find. It could be Adobe Connect, Cisco WebEx, or Bridget. But I've also put a second screen there because you have the option of splitting the video. Why would you want to do that? So that you end up with a video that looks like the screen on the right-hand side there. Dedicated video, dedicated people taking up the whole screen, rather than small picture-in-pictures, where yes, you can still see them, but they're very, very small, potentially quite out of focus. So by having a second screen in the room, you can improve the experience that you are offering within the classroom. Because if we think about a room like this, one of the challenges for delivery of content to remote delegates is the experience of the remote delegates good enough, but also is the experience within the classroom, the people who are actually in that room, good enough as well. So if they can see the people who are connected remotely, it helps to create a classroom experience. It helps to bring all of those people together. I've also put a screen at the back of the room, and the reason that that's there, again, all of these are options, obviously, but the reason that that's there is to get you to think about the fact that you could have a screen at the back of the room which is for the trainer. And effectively, the remote delegates become the back row of the classroom. So the trainer is looking at the class with the people that are in the room with them, and they're also looking up at the screen at the back of the room so they can see the people who are connected on video. So you go back to the principle of, I've got a question, raise my hand. The people who are connected on video remotely can potentially do that. And the trainer can see them and respond to them when he's ready. I've also put 2 cameras in this particular diagram. And again, these are all choices. The reason being that you've got the option of adding more than one camera if you wanted to, so that you can switch between the camera that's looking at the audience or the camera that's at the back of the room that's pointing at the trainer. So now we come on to thinking about why you'd want to bother doing any of this. And I've given an example here of the fact that you've got 4 different locations. In this particular example, the principle is that you can have one trainer in any of those locations and delegates sat in a classroom receiving training from that trainer. And with the 2-screen system, they will be able to see the data, see all the content that that trainer is sharing with them. When the trainer poses a question, they can walk up to one of those interactive screens and they can write their answer back. So the trainer says, I'd like you to all give me some of the values that you have within your organization, for example, and each group can walk up to their interactive screens without the trainer being in the room with them and start to write their answers up onto the boards. And all of that information is coming back and being shared with everybody else. By having the video, everyone can see each other as well. So we've just extended the ability for that particular trainer who might be based in London on this particular day to deliver his training. Now, if we think about this from a return on investment angle now, firstly, we've saved the travel of that trainer, traveling around the 3 other locations, yeah? Because he's able to deliver that training across those 3 other classrooms. We've also, if you are an organization that charges for your training, you've got the option of looking at your cost model to say, normally, when I run a course in London, I need to have a minimum of 5 people booked onto that course. And if I get less than 5, I'll cancel the course. In this particular example, some of the companies that we're working with might put a course on in London, only get 3 people booked on, but get 3 people booked on in each of the other locations and offer a discount to those people, because they say you pay 100% of the course fee if you're in the same room as the trainer. But to do that, you've got to travel to London. If you would like to receive the training in Leeds, that's not a problem. We can offer it in Leeds, and you pay 75% of the course fee. Okay? So in that particular example, if they got 3 people in each location, the total revenue that they're able to charge and make from running that training has just increased dramatically in comparison to potentially offering a course, scheduling it, and then cancelling it. So in summary, the combination of hardware and software, we can help. And I've given you some examples today, but I'll tell you a little bit about us in a second. But we can help to create the experience with the flexibility to help you achieve what you might want to achieve. And some of the themes to think about are, what do I want to do with my data? Is a static PowerPoint presentation good enough? And the irony is that I'm delivering this to you with a static PowerPoint presentation, which is why I'd love you to come to my stand so that I can show you how I think you could be delivering it with an interactive screen. Is the audio good enough? Can people be heard? Can the right people be heard? And is the video experience good enough? And ultimately, how do you want to connect your remote delegates into your classroom? Are you going classroom to classroom? Or are you going classroom to tablet user, PC user? Because again, that makes a difference potentially in some of the software platforms that you might be using, or the software platforms that we might recommend. So is anybody doing this? We've got lots of clients that we've done this for already, and we've got some case studies on the stand that we can share with you. I've just picked one, because if anybody's feeling skeptical about the fact that any of this is actually capable and it will work, this is an example of a client of ours, and they're based in London. And I didn't realize that I've copied his slides and he's got timings on his slides, so I might have to just flick between the slides in a second. So this is a company called Imparando. They have 21 purpose-built training rooms in Aldgate in London. They've been offering those facilities for people to book for a long time now. You can go into their rooms and you can have a room of PCs that are set up, and if you tell them what software you want installed, they'll preload the software for you. They offer 100 megabyte internet connection, tea, coffee, lunch facilities, all that type of thing. But they're finding an increasing number of their clients saying, we want to be able to deliver our courses to people remotely. We want to be able to deliver it to people who cannot come to London. Is there a way that you can improve your facilities to help us? So this is a quick quote from their managing director. I've tried to highlight a couple of the key things in here, which I'm just going to mention very quickly. So when they went out and spoke to people who do these types of technologies, they decided in the end that we were the only organisation that they spoke to who genuinely understood what they were trying to achieve. We delivered an entirely versatile, next-generation virtual learning platform. And again, these are his words, not mine. And that was a combination of high-quality audio, video, He even used the word cost effective. So for those of you who might be thinking that this is an incredibly expensive thing to do, again, this is what was not my quote. He called it a cost effective solution. And again, Imparando have a range of different clients. So an example of a client of theirs is HP, Hewlett Packard. Hewlett Packard book a room, and Hewlett Packard want to come into that room and use Hewlett Packard's own software. I can't actually remember the name, I'm afraid. And they want to use that to connect their remote delegates. The next day, Salesforce.com have booked a room, and they want to use WebEx because they have a global WebEx account. So again, the importance for Imparando was to be able to have a solution that was flexible enough to work with those different platforms as people come in and book the room. The result that he's put here is a totally immersed, optimized learning experience for all. They do see a lot of in-room benefit from the technology, and so here's an example of one of the rooms that they've done. You've got an interactive projector at the front of the room, so you can get interactive whiteboards. They're actually projecting onto the wall. Okay, so there's no special interactive whiteboard there. All of the interactivity occurs through the projector. They've got the ceiling microphones. I've given a close-up photo of one of them there, but there's 2 ceiling microphones in this particular room, and then the trainer has a lapel microphone. There's a USB camera at the back of the room. If you look in the top left picture, they've got 1 camera in this particular room, and it's at the back. And Imparando are very happy for you to come along and book a room and try out the experience. So if you would like to come and talk to us about the fact that you would consider replicating some of this technology in your organization, that's fantastic. If you're still feeling cynical or still feel that you need to try out the experience to see what it's like, this is an example of a facility in Aldgate, so central London, where you can book it for the day and run a course from there and see how you get on. So we want people to consider this to be an investment. Invest in the technology today, benefit from the technology tomorrow. And here's just a quick summary of some of the reasons that you might want to consider this from a return on investment angle. The ability to deliver your training to anybody, anywhere in the world, using the internet, using devices. If you can enhance that experience, hopefully a number of things will occur. They'll come back. You might be able to charge more money. They might recommend it to somebody else. So by improving the quality of the delivery and the technology that's being used for that delivery, there are a whole range of very good reasons for doing it if you are already trying to deliver your training remotely. Improving the experience of the remote learners is something that might be important from an internal training perspective. So again, we find there are organizations who run internal training. We've been talking to an example of a company recently who actually have 300 locations across the UK, and they have a team of trainers who drive around the UK training the people in their locations. And what they've realized is that there is a more effective way of doing that by using technology. So those trainers are still exist, they still have a job, but their job is to do far less travel than they used to have to do. And yes, they do still meet people face to face, but only when they have large amounts of content to deliver or key content to deliver. The small updates that they want people to have, they get delivered remotely through this technology. Very quick note about us. We try to work with what we call progressive organizations. In other words, if you don't think you have a problem, then you're not going to want to talk to me. So we try to find organizations who want to adapt, improve, and change. And we try to become a trusted partner to that organization. So today I've picked some examples of technologies that we've implemented, but there are a massive range of choices. And one of the things that we try to do is we try to help people to understand their choices so that you can then pick the appropriate technology for your application, environment, and budget. So we work in solution design consultancy. We can offer proof of concepts. The example that I gave earlier with the London, Wokingham, Dublin and Leeds locations is an example of a client we've been working with for the last 6 years. They've just started rolling out their solution across Europe now, but we worked for 12 months with them on a proof of concept. They didn't spend much money with us up until the fact they were absolutely happy with the solution that they were proposing internally, that they had the budget sign off for it, and we can work through that journey with you. We obviously offer installation of all of this, training and technical support. And ultimately, the key thing is we want happy clients who give us nice testimonials and references like Imparando. We want people who come and talk to us to be able to go along and try out the experience with organisations like Imparando. And if you genuinely are happy with it, you may consider investing in it within your own organisation. In that case, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the show.